It's time.
Nice. Sorry.
All right. So, getting this party started. So we'll start with introductions from everybody that's on the panel today, and then I'll give a little bit of background on why this topic is important and relevant to our community, and then we'll just jump into questions. So, would you like to start? Oh, I suppose I could introduce myself. I am Kendall Nelson. I work for the OpenStack Foundation. It's been about 2 years working there. Before that, I worked for IBM, and so I was somewhat remote there, but my role is completely remote now. I was based in Minnesota and recently moved to Seattle, so US-based.
All right, I'm Flavio. Excuse me. Flavio Percoco. I work at Red Hat. I've been working remotely for at least 6 years, and before that, I used to work like partially remotely as well for another company. Anyway, I'm supposed to be based in Italy, but due to travel, I actually go around the world and work from very different time zones very often, so I don't have a specific time zone that I'm always at.
All the time zones.
All the time zones, yes.
Them all.
My name is Julia. I've been working full-time remote for 5 years or so. Before that, part-time remote. And my time zone tends to be UTC -7 to -4. But that changes. I fear the next month. All the time zones.
I've got one, that's right. My name is Matthew Oliver. I'm from Australia. This is a weird accent. Let's see. So I've been working remotely for about coming on to 5 years now. First with Workspace. Now I'm with Suze. Yeah, that's me.
Okay, I'm Liu Sheng. I'm a Chinese OpenStacker, and I'm working for Huawei.
Is it microphone?
Yeah.
I think the microphone.
Or maybe close to your mouth.
Okay.
Gonna try this one?
Sorry.
Try that one.
Sorry, I'm Liu Sheng. I'm a Chinese OpenStacker. I'm working for Huawei, and now I'm working on the OpenLab project, and I was Stilometer code previously. Here I will share some points about specific the APAC contributors. Here seems here is not many APAC faces. Okay.
Yeah. So working remotely is not the easiest skill in the world. It's like given you don't get to talk to people every day in person. You don't get to have the same sort of conversations that you do, or you have different conversations in person in an office, getting to see people every day versus in a highly distributed worldwide community like ours. I think the numbers are 6,000 or more contributors to OpenStack, and we are obviously highly distributed, as evidenced even just by this panel. So working remotely becomes really difficult, and it takes a long time to come up with the skills to be able to be effective. So a few of us kind of started to talk about the first question, but if you have worked remotely before OpenStack, how is that different than it is now, working on OpenStack? Who wants to start?
So yeah, how's that different? When I started working remotely, it was again, it was kind of like part-time at the time, and the main difference, I guess, is that we were all in the same time zone, so that made it way easier. We're not in the same office, of course, and but we had the tools, we had the same time zone, and we spoke the same language, same culture, so that made it extremely simple. Now then, I moved to OpenStack, and I was open to this massive community of people all around the world, and where not even my colleagues would work on the same project that I was working on. So you get to, like, even if you are sitting right next to one of your co-workers in the same company, not necessarily you guys are sharing the same project, so that you are kind of like forced, or rather not say forced, but you're kind of like forced to work remotely with the rest of the community, so you're exposed to this like worldwide group of people. And then you got to learn about time zones, culture, you got to speak on the language here, it's not your mother language, and yeah, so it was extremely different. That's the TLDR, I guess.
I'll echo some of the same statements. I worked with a team that were 2 or 3 teams that were all generally on the eastern side of the United States. So we were all basically worked the same hours, except when after hours, some of us did tend to work later in the night, just to kind of keep a work-life balance that was more healthy for us with the needs of the business. But yeah, we had to start learning regional culture differences that you might not think of in the United States, but there really are, like different cultures in different areas.
So you hear me? This one's working? Yep, good. So like I said, the last 5 years been working fully remotely. The only other time I did that was when I first finished university or college or whatever the Americans call it. And I won't lie, I was very lazy, and so I was working from home, and it was very easy to get distracted. So one thing I might say is being passionate about the project and the people you're working with is huge. It makes a huge difference. That I'm a lot older now and a lot more mature too, I'm sure.
Okay, as you may know, more and more APIC contributors have become the new force in open source communities, not only in OpenStack communities, but also in such as Kubernetes, Terraform, or OPNFV. The interest in open source communities are still rising in APIC. But there are some barriers I think it's the APIC contributor will meet, such as the time zone, as mentioned previously, and the cultural difference or language barriers. Yes, I am a good example.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I will share some viewpoints about and give some suggestions about how the APIC contributor involved into the open source communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So obviously time zones are also a really, really difficult thing to manage. I know Tuesday night for me, Wednesday for the rest of the world, host a meeting at 1 a.m. my time, just to kind of try to relieve the stress on the other side of the globe. I took one for the team, but how do you guys manage time zone differences? Do you have any tips, tricks, things to help people out with that?
Being from a different time, very different time zone, most of my colleagues in the business at SUSE all tend to be asleep while I'm awake, which I guess is good for less distraction, but hard when you're trying to onboard or you're trying to work with someone on something. So that does mean a lot of nighttime meetings for me. So you have to have that kind of that home life balance can kind of get in the way sometimes. Like I've got a young 2-year-old and a pregnant wife, so those evenings are actually quite important for family time too. So that's probably the hardest balance I found. And with a lot of my upstream teammates, I work on the Swift team. A lot of them are American, so there's a lot of morning type meetings and stuff. So you kind of got to get ready to kind of stretch yourself a little bit because there's not that many in my time zone that really work on this stuff. I want that to grow, so I have more people to kind of, come on. If you're Asia Pacific, come join us.
Yeah, I guess one thing I try to do is, I've always felt like being in Europe is actually quite good because you're in between APAC and the US, so you get some benefits there. But I guess one of the things that I try to change in my mindset is that I'm not necessarily working from 9 to 6 p.m. From 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So I just make my day as flexible as possible just to accommodate all these different meetings and interactions that I gotta have with other people. So I don't try to force. I do realize that this is not necessarily possible for everyone. It's something that works for me and that I can do it because of life, I guess. But yeah, that's something that has worked very well for me, and try not to stress myself about having a meeting at 9 p.m. and not being able to go out or something like that. Like there's 7 days in the week and I can do it some other day, I guess. Although I do try to not. I was in the TC, and one of the things I did last as my time at sea was getting rid of the meetings and just create all these office hours. So, and I'm saying this because I try to have as few meetings as possible in my week, and not because I hate meetings, because, well, I do hate meetings, but mostly because it is really hard to get all the people together that you want to talk to and accommodate all the different time zones. So,
I think the hardest thing for me was managing time zones was realizing that I'm no longer working 8 to 5, and for me that was a huge emotional, like, societal burned-in block in my brain that I'm a bad employee for not working 8 to 5 and all the other hours, and I had to learn to basically dial it back and focus on what I needed to do for myself and why I needed to be productive. Once I found kind of that intersection after a couple of years, I actually kind of felt happy and sane.
Okay, I think that this is the one of the most important point for APAC contributors, the time zone, because many projects co-reviewers or contributors are in the Western countries. People in APAC cannot work with them at the same time period. So if you want to be very involved in the open source communities, it's necessary to attending some online meetings such as the ISC meetings. My colleagues who working on NOAA, Keystone, and Neutron, they often attended the ISC meetings even in the midnight.
I can relate to that, definitely.
Though saying that, I was in the Magnum onboarding earlier, and they, because they seem to have that time zone focus more on Europe and APAC, their meeting is in our time. I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
It's much easier to schedule meetings if you're not trying to account for...
A globe is annoying because there's no nice time for everyone.
No.
Right?
World Time Buddy is a wonderful website that helps.
Time Buddy is awesome.
Yeah. So a few of you started to touch on this, but how do you overcome the urge to work extra hours and not have to be the best employee working the regular times and also to accommodate for other people's time zones?
Well, I think it goes a little bit back to what we were saying before, right? I don't think I got to work from 9 to 6 p.m. I tend to set goals for myself for the day. These are the things I want to do. This is what a successful day would feel, would look like to me today. Set some goals. Sometimes it is hard when you end up just answering emails the entire day, because you get at the end of the day and you're like, I did shit today. I just was not able to do anything. But then turns out that answering email is actually part of your job, and it takes a long time. And especially if English is not your if you're not native language, I guess. And so I do set goals for myself and try to achieve those and try to be realistic on what I can do and what I cannot do based on the schedule and amount of meetings that I have to do, the errands I gotta run, and all that kind of things. My entire life goes kind of not necessarily strictly planned in the day, but I try, and I also gotta admit that my wife helps a lot. When I'm working a lot, she's like, and it's dinner time, and then you gotta stop.
Yeah.
Having a family or a significant other really does help, because, especially if they're remote too, because then you can both kind of make sure each other eats or has coffee or tea, or needs someone goes and runs the errand to put food in the fridge, kind of things. Because there can be times where I do need to work extra hours to get something done, but then it really comes down to goals. And towards the end of the week, it's very easy to go, I don't think I actually need to do anything really today, or I need to do this couple things, or check my email, or and at that point, it's really, to me, it comes down to communicating with the people I'm working with, and making sure just that they can reach me if they need me, if they need to have an interrupt into my life.
I think think balancing it out is I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that I think balancing out the amount of like I try to I know how much like legally hours I should be working per week, but I know it's not like it's very strict. So if you balance it out, like sometimes I would just work on Saturdays because it's just raining outside and I don't want to go outside, and then Monday is sunny and then I'll just go outside on Monday. But anyway, just balance it out.
So I made sure that there was just try and stop me working too much because it's very easy to do, especially when you're kind of always in your office in a way, like you're home and you're in your office. I tried to designate a certain area of my house as my office and I go into. I won't lie, it's still hard not to go down and check mail all the time and then get sidetracked. But my significant other it's great that she lets me know when I really need to come and help with the baby. And now that my daughter can speak, her calling out dad helps too.
I think the email is a good choice, and the open source participants may not only be the developers or reviewers. They may, the email make people can see your reports in different time zones, and for contributors, you also can check the IC meeting logs. That's a good choice.
Yeah, those things definitely help when you can't make it to the meeting and you have to circle back later and want to also keep it within a reasonable time and not just spend your entire evening during dinner reading through logs or what have you. So what was the most surprising change that you had to make when you started working remotely on OpenStack?
Well, you can start. I'll have to think about it.
The most surprising change was, oh, I now have a 1 a.m. meeting. Ooh. Luckily, at some point, I was able to get away from that. But yeah, that was the most surprising thing. I'd never really had experienced that before, other than the 2, 3, 4 a.m. drive into the data center because of an issue.
A different 1 a.m. meeting.
The other 1 a.m. meeting. So I think for me, when trying to get involved, initially trying to get involved, there's a whole lot of names on IRC, right? And you can't tell if you can be sarcastic with people or joke with those people because they're just like names and it's just text, and it's hard to show, So I think that was kind of hard to get comfortable talking to people and doing that stuff. And honestly, it wasn't until I started coming to these kind of events where I started putting faces to IRC nicks and personalities, real personalities to IRC nicks. You can read a lot into text on a screen, right? So for me, I think that was one of the kind of the shockers for me, because before that I was really always in an office, right? So you're always having that face-to-face interaction. And then cultural differences and learning to slow down when I speak, because I speak really quickly because I'm an English speaker. And I work with a lot of Japanese people in the Swift team. And so, you don't realize that because they're too nice to tell you anything.
Yes, for the APAC contributor like me, it's as mentioned, the language barrier is a challenge for me. And to be honest, the writing and reading is more easy. I think is more easy than speaking or listening.
Yeah.
Additionally, there are some other open source activities that we can attend in China. There are OpenStack Days China or OpenStack Bug Smash or meetups. People can can talk face to face to share thoughts. And also, as mentioned, the cultural difference or language style is also sometimes cause misunderstandings sometimes.
Yeah.
I think that now that I have thought about it, the most surprising, well, not the most surprising, but one of the surprising things that I had to change, or I would say learn, when I started working on OpenStack was to convey ideas in a written form on email. I used to ignore emails a lot before I started working on OpenStack. And then I was presented with OpenStack Dev, and oh my God. And then, and then all the ideas that I wanted to communicate with the rest of the community, and then you tend to reply to emails using the same structure that you would use in your native language, and then it just doesn't match it. It doesn't match necessarily the way you would speak in English. But it's not like I'll go even beyond the language barrier here, which is huge. But it's just learning. Like my language teacher was right actually, and I completely ignored her throughout high school. But learn how to be summarize and be concise in the things that you want to say, and be able to say them in a way that people are going to interpret them, not necessarily as a statement, but something as that you're proposing and something that needs to be discussed and kind of thing. So learning how to write short but concise and understandable emails was a thing that I had to go back and read and refresh.
I still think I need to learn that.
Well, I'm not saying I'm good at it though. I'm saying I'm I pretend I am now. But.
Yeah. So there are lots of challenges that we encounter working remotely. They're different from person to person. We all have, like, some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts. I'm kind of going to put these two questions together and say, like, how do you avoid procrastination if that's a challenge for you? And how do you manage the lack of human contact if that's a challenge for you?
I don't. I procrastinate a lot. So I actually don't think procrastination is necessarily a bad thing. That's a good break when you're working, and when you tend to work extra hours. Procrastination is actually helpful because it just makes you think about something else, and you just go ahead and look at KCD or kittens online, and that's it. Yeah. But I think it really depends on what you procrastinate on. What I try to do is I try to procrastinate on things that I think that are going to be useful eventually. Like, I don't read Hacker News. That's, Jesus, no. I do read Reddit. So I have, my subreddits, the things that I believe are useful for the future, things I want to read. I, read some blog posts, and that you would interpret that as procrastinating because I'm not writing code or doing reviews or answering emails. But they're still useful for me, right? So I get a book, do something like that, and instead of procrastinating on Facebook or some other social medias that don't give me anything.
So targeted procrastination.
Exactly.
So I guess I'll echo all of that and really say that if you're working on a project where it's very interrupt heavy at times, or you have lots of downstream people pinging you, you actually do need to stop and procrastinate because you need to reset your brain and try and get back to a natural flow of what you were thinking, not, jump right back into it, because then your brain's not done with the prior discussion. Mm-hmm. It's still going to roll around there for a while, most likely. And it really helps to just stop, go have a cup of coffee, go make some tea, load Facebook or whatever, and recenter your brain. Personally, I'm an introvert. I don't really like dealing with people. I also found that I need to have human interaction or I get really depressed. So I found that, well, at a minimum, what worked for me is small grocery runs every day or every other day. So I'm at least getting out of the house. I might go get a cup of coffee while I'm out, sit down, take a break. I've always found that really helps to kind of help me actually avoid procrastinating because it sets some element that's fixed in my day. Mm-hmm. And also it helps me with the human contact just enough so I don't get terribly depressed.
I guess I'm lucky because my wife's at home looking after the kids and stuff, and she's obviously about to have another one too. So she's not working at the moment. So day to day, I kind of get to have lunch with my family. That's actually a really cool bonus, working remotely and working from home, rather than having to commute to work in the morning, commute home, and then never see my child. I actually get to have lunch and read my daughter a story and then put her to bed. It's kind of nice. It may surprise you that I'm quite introverted too. So I must say, when I travel pretty much every 3 months for an OpenStack event, and you're face to face with people, and you're having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then probably drinks afterwards with them for the whole week. I'm really looking forward to going home and recharging a bit. So that kind of works out quite well. I think if I stayed at home for a longer period of time, I'd probably find it a lot harder, and probably miss an office so much more. There is interaction with people online, but it's not quite the same thing.
Okay, for the what I want to say is communication tools. In China, the WeChat is the main tools for me to communicate privately with others. But in other countries, maybe the Twitter or Facebook are main tools for communication. That make people cannot communicate privately with other contributors from Western countries. So for the newcomer of the contributors, I think to be a qualified reviewer or enjoy to help others will make people also like to help you. And for newcomer contributors, many people may don't familiar with the develop process and just put some positive one or negative one in the reviews, or just submit a message of traffic such as typos. That is, I think, is not recommended. To help others with in reviewer or help to do other discussions that will make other people also would like to help you in some areas.
Yeah. Looking at the time, I think we have one more question, and then we'll be able to open it up to any questions that you guys have. So last one, what do you like most about working remotely, and what is the biggest challenge for you? Kind of a softball question a little bit, but.
Yeah. So what I like the most is the flexibility it gives me. When I said at the very beginning when I was introducing myself, I said I travel a lot. That's because I really like it, and I'm in love with cultures. For me, being able to explore new cultures and being able to explore new places is really important. And I travel a lot, not necessarily for work. I also travel on my own, and being able to be flexible. And so my wife works remotely as well, so that helps a lot. So we get to travel together, we get to spend a lot of time together, and we just build our days based on whatever we have to do. And that definitely simplifies my passion for going and exploring new places. And that's also the biggest challenge, actually, because when you're in a place that you really like and then it is all new, then it is kind of hard to find the motivation to go back to work. So it takes a lot of discipline. Working remotely takes a lot of discipline. It's something that that's also one of the surprises, actually, going back to the other question. Finding out how much discipline you gotta have when you want to work remotely, and you have that one meeting at that specific time, but then there's also, I don't know, I sort of like there's also good waves on the beach, and then you're like between going outside and it's like paddling out or attending the meeting. It's really hard to find the motivation to actually attend the meeting and do your job, but I normally do it. And I'm saying this on record.
I live on the beach, so I have the same problem.
Just in case my boss is watching.
So in my case, the thing I like the most is no commute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because a commute can drive me insane. Whereas the biggest challenge is the fact that I don't get out of the house.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I agree with all those statements, really. I was lucky enough, because I was working remotely, I moved to a little beach town in Australia. And so I pretty much live on a beach. And so that makes it very hard sometimes to get out. I mean, not get out, I guess, which is a good thing for me, if you look at my physique. So at least when I used to commute, I didn't like it. Sometimes you could ride or do some exercise, or at least walking to a bus or train, you know. Currently, my commute is walking down some stairs to an office downstairs. So getting out and actually doing exercise and stuff, because otherwise I just get too interested in what I'm doing and I don't do anything at all. So I think that's actually been a real health thing for me. Like, I need to get outside and do stuff. I need to get out and find exercise to do, because I get caught up and I go down tangents all day long trying to fix things. So I think that's my biggest challenge. My challenge is health, because I don't leave the house otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay, for me, even I'm working remotely, but I and my colleagues also need to attend to come to the workplace. And the biggest challenge, I think, is the time zone and the communication barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. So if you have questions that you want to come and ask us, please come up to the microphones. Otherwise, if you would like to do it via Twitter, either during the rest of the session or even after, these are most of our Twitter handles, and you should also probably add these hashtags. Flavio, did you want to do a plug for your hashtag?
Yeah, life of a remote tea. We'll be using that. Whenever you're working from a remote place and you like it, take a picture, put it on Twitter, and use that hashtag.
Yeah.
It's cool. I do want to say one more thing though. Well, which is weird because we're a worldwide community and there's no way we can fix that, air quotes. But working remotely is not necessarily for everyone. And the reason I'm saying this is because when I started working remotely, I thought it would only take good discipline and being mature enough and sitting down and do it. And 3 years in, and I figured out that it's definitely not for everyone. So if you feel like working remotely is not a thing for you, just don't feel bad about it. Try to find a place where I'm not saying that you should leave the community. That's why I said that there's no way we can fix this because OpenStack is worldwide. But definitely don't feel bad about it. It's not necessarily for everyone, and just do whatever you gotta do.
Yeah, I sometimes miss offices, like the chatting to people, and having tea and coffee with people, and just chewing the fat, all day. Not all day, you know what I mean. I miss going to the offices sometimes, and I do, sometimes do miss it. But traveling and coming to these conferences is kind of like the same thing. Like, look at the hallway tracks this week. It's awesome.
So, does anybody have questions?
Questions?
Excellent.
2 questions. We got it there first.
Perfect.
I'm just curious, how do you factor in career progression? So I'm still fairly early in my career, and remote is something that I've been considering for a while. It's not something that's really widely accepted at my current organization. But how does that factor into your long-term life? So
from my point of view, because I am very remote from the rest of my organization, you can't have to be loud because it's easy to be forgotten, right? Because I'm never there. I'm not necessarily vocal when they're awake. So try and make sure you're seen and heard as much as you can is kind of important working remotely, at least in my experience. And other than that, it's like anything. Work hard. Say yes, help out whatever you can. Nothing's too little for you, and just like anything else you would do to help with career progression. But the main thing is make sure that they don't forget you. So be heard.
Right. Well, I guess I'm lucky because I work for a company that is mainly remote. So it's kind of like it is already in the mindset of everyone in there. But if you're not, I would say don't feel that you should work harder than others because you're remotely. Actually, I would say just work as hard as others, work as hard as you want to work, and make sure that you help changing the mindset in your company. And one thing that has helped me is being very blunt and clear on what my career path is with my boss. And I've changed managers several times at Red Hat, and every time I do that, it's like first conversation is like, this is what I want, that's what I want to get, there's what I want to get, and just like build a path that you can follow, and make sure that you have a goal that you want to accomplish or a place that you want to get to. Just have it laid out very well and just go through that.
I'd actually like, I know I'm butting in, I'm sorry, but I wanted to comment on that. So I've been working remotely full-time for 18 and a half years. So
Wow.
I've got some experience in the area.
Do you want to pull up a chair?
Yeah.
And before I have some general comments, I wanted to address that. I just recently switched jobs, and I've only worked for 4 different companies over 30 years. The bottom line is working remotely is not necessarily acceptable by every company. Mm-hmm. And it really surprises me, like when I was going through the interview process in January, that Google turned me away because they were, quote, not interested in remote people, unquote. So the bottom line is you're going to have to learn acceptance. There are just some companies that it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So don't even bother. Don't be the one to try to sell them on it. And even within a company that does support remote workers, you're going to get a wide variety of acceptance based on the individual manager and team. And you're just going to have to learn to live with that fact. And don't try to basically change the world on that point, because you're just going to kill yourself for no good point. They've already made up their mind. No point. And then, as I always jokingly tell with people, I'm at the pinnacle of my career because I'm a remote worker. I know I cannot be promoted any higher up the ladder. You know, it's a bit of sarcasm, but it is a true fact that your career path is kind of limited, and you go into it knowing that you're making a decision to change, to get a quality of life and a life-work balance that you won't get in the office rat race. I got to walk my kids back and forth to school every day from kindergarten on up, to your comments about being around your family, right, and not having to deal with a commute. Those are, you know, days and moments in my life that no amount of time up the ladder is going to make you feel better for.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to touch a little bit on diversity. So I've been working in the OpenStack community for a while now already, but something that I still struggle with day to day is it's been a very a great learning experience to work with people from so many backgrounds and so many cultures from so many countries. But I've also found myself in the very awkward position of meaning no harm or no offense, but still, you know, get my point across in a weird way, or, you know, an awkward way. So do you have like any tips to, like, I try to stay like politically correct and everything, but do you have like any advice on how to not offend people, or, you know, not come across in the wrong way?
I think we're all human, and people make mistakes, and people take people out of context all the time. Hopefully not too much. I think you just own up to it and humble yourself. Like, apologize. You know, it's okay. Like, we're all humans. We all make mistakes, and we all don't understand. Like, I'll say stuff, and people look at me funny, and I don't realize it's an Australianism, or in some certain words are bad in Australia, or not so bad in Australia, and I say them out loud, and people go, I can't believe you said that. Yeah. But you go, you know, it's not like, oh, what are you talking about? In my culture, it's fine. No, just back down. Who cares? Like, let's talk about it like people. Let's humble ourselves. And apologize. Be the bigger person. That's my experience. Happens to me a lot.
Yeah, and I would say assume good faith. That's what I always do.
Yeah, that's good.
Get good at over-communicating.
Yeah. It's assume good faith of what the people are saying, and try to, you know, convey that mindset to others as well. From a language perspective, use as much plain English as you can. Don't use references to local things in your country, on your culture, because they don't.
OpenStack 101.
Yeah, exactly. They are not understandable to other people. Try not to be cynic or sarcastic or any kind of things, because it just makes it harder. Sometimes you cannot avoid it. You will offend people, because there's so many different cultures. There's so many different things that you just don't know.
But on the other hand, also learn from it. If you do make a mistake, learn from it and don't keep making the same mistake, right? You're learning about how it affects different cultures, or different people, or different genders, or different whatever. If you are an idiot and you do something stupid, then please learn from it.
Well, actually, that's a good point. I just wanted to bounce on that. When people have called me out on something in a respectful way, I mean, they don't insult me or anything, I've actually learned from that. And, you know, moving forward, I was able to, like, not do this thing again. So, yeah.
I think the key is that we all have good intentions. And as long as we keep them in the back of our mind when talking to people, that usually helps soften the blows and makes us stop and think, did they really mean it that way? Or am I interpreting it that wrong?
Yeah, that's good.
So I meant to sort of have a question or two. Just some general comments. Like I said, I've been doing it for a while. Everything that you guys said, you have a lot of lessons that I learned the hard way over 18 and a half years. But if I could, I wanted to footnote a couple. Is there any chance you could put the previous slide up just for a moment? There we go.
There we go.
So your comment about, you were talking earlier about having a dedicated place for your work. That's strong. I learned the hard way. You have an office, and if you've got family especially, they kind of have to learn as well that when you're inside that office, you're at work, and please try not to disturb. That's tough with young kids.
And for me, away from the living part of the house.
Out of the busy part of the house. But resist the urge to take the laptop and go sit on the couch and finish some things off, because that's just a slippery slope that gets
Or
you
procrastination there.
Yeah.
I definitely do
Yeah.
that still.
Avoiding procrastination, one in the middle, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. You're talking about having scheduled events. That's big. I schedule myself to go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week,
Yeah.
and other events outside of the house. The other thing about the human contact, volunteer work. I volunteered at the kids' school with a local sports club doing coaching and admin stuff. It gives you a definite reason to do nothing other than to sort of go be with other human beings. Yeah, I just wanted to add those. Oh, and if you have the flexibility, I saw a lot of people when I first started working remotely who did what I call the technical Luddite thing. They went and they bought a 5-acre farm out in the middle of nowhere where it was an hour's drive to a grocery store, and they got cabin fever, right? Yeah. So if you can, choose to live in a place where you're around people. For most of my time when I've been working remotely, I can walk to a coffee shop, a public library, and even if I'm just sitting there working on my laptop around other people, it makes you feel human again, as opposed to being completely isolated.
The flexibility is awesome too. In my old team, we had a term called cafe hacking, where we would disappear and go to a cafe for a while, and you'd learn how many coffees you can have, like how long you sit at the table working on a laptop, and how slow you can sip that coffee before you either have to buy another one or get out. But you can do that stuff. Flexibility is great.
Changing venues definitely helps me pay attention.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we're pretty close. We can maybe do
really
one.
quick. So my question is a bit related to what we just discussed here. So with your day that spans far beyond 9 to 6, you have to come with you are reachable most of the time. And my question is, do you have to come with a strategy to disconnect sometime?
Absolutely. It's key to have a strategy to disconnect. It's also key to have a strategy for people to be able to get a hold of you if they absolutely need to, and assert those boundaries. My team in the open source community knows how they can make my phone ring at any time of the day if they absolutely need to.
Yeah.
It has happened twice in 4 years, and it was actually a legitimate issue.
Or my online team sometimes loves it when they realize that I forgot to put my phone on silent, and so they start pinging me on IRC because I wake up and I answer because I'm awake now and it's a question. And then they realize that hey, your phone's not on silent. I'm going to keep pinging you because that's fun. Thanks, guys.
I guess something that has helped me is not having my work email on my phone or IRC or anything. That's a no for me. I will never. The only times I enable work email is when I'm traveling, which is pretty much most of the time. But having said that, yes, unless like I'm actually traveling to a conference, not like taking holidays or something like that. If I'm traveling to a conference and I need to be reachable, I would enable it. Otherwise, it is completely off, no IRC, no way that I can work from my home, from my phone, because that's very tempting.
Yeah. I have slightly different IRC nicks for when I'm on my computer versus when I have an account set up on my phone all the time, and it's Diablo Rojo phone. And then when I'm on my computer, it's Diablo Rojo, so you can like tell if it's really important. Yeah, you can ping the phone, but in general, I try not to. I think we're over time.
Thank you.
Yeah, quick.
Yeah, very quick. Just one annotation. I agree with basically everything that has been said before, but everybody that is actually working remotely and, for example, hasn't an own office room or whatever, or feels from time to time the need to actually meet with someone in person. What helped me in the past a lot is, well, actually living in a city, having like co-working spaces. And a lot of co-working spaces actually have like technical people around, so you get in touch with other stuff, other technology stuff that is quite interesting to talk over a coffee or whatnot. And yeah, that might help other people as well. It helped me at least a lot, especially when you have kids at home and sometimes just get like a little bit outside and have focused work.
All
yeah,
right.
thanks.
Thank you very much. Cool. Hope you all enjoyed our topics today. If you have other questions, please tweet at us, use hashtags and all that.
Or reach at us.
Yeah.
Human content.
Or follow us around for the next.
We're still here.
Yeah.
For the time being.
You also know Kendall's phone IRC now.
Yikes.
Diablo Rojo phone.